Behind Hacı Bektaş Veli's attitude, which reduces tensions and reconciles the parties in times of social crisis, there is a mystical perspective inherited from the Khorasan Yesevi school. One of the definitions of Sufism is to come to the rescue of needy, to take care of everyone, to sympathize with the situation of everyone. Because regardless of belief, each individual is another world, another being. By following this definition of Sufism, Hünkar Hacı Bektaş Veli transformed his lodge into a physical, spiritual rehabilitation center where the hungry were fed, the poor were clothed, hearts were repaired and built. Dervishes who entered his lodge with good manners, on the one hand, observed God in the steeds of their hearts. On the other hand, they loved the people for the sake of God. They treated everyone with compassion, mercy, and service, regardless of who they were. When the idea of the oneness of God was experienced in their hearts and in their secrets, at the level of truth, they started spreading peace, tranquility, and virtue to their surroundings with the excitement of love of God. Hacı Bektaş Veli once said, "Love is my foundation, respect is my friend." Accordingly, his education paradigm consists of three main goals. One, to make people love God, Allah. So, two, to make God love people. And three, to make people love each other. Hacı Bektaş Veli describes Allah as a creator who should be loved in his works called Besmele Tefsiri and Fatiha Tefsiri. In his works titled 40 Hadis, Makalat-ı Gaybiye ve Kelimat-ı Ayniye, Kitab-ül Fevaid, he teaches the dervishes how to make God love them. The aim of making people love each other, regardless of race, religion, nationality, or gender, constitutes an inseparable part of his works. The first priority of Hacı Bektaş Veli in the education process was to make his dervishes reach the stage of hakika, mystical truth, by passing truth through the states of Sharia, exoteric path, Tariqa, esoteric path, Marife, mystical, intuitive knowledge. According to his understanding of Sufism, in addition to having a head's eye that helps people see things, they also have a heart's eye that allows them to make spiritual observations and see the truth, hakika. Hacı Bektaş Veli is a wise man and a man of love who tries to see and show the truth of Allah's existence with the heart's eye. The curtain of heart's eye is the feeling of envy, which is constantly preoccupied with the mundane realm. According to him, unless the existence, which is only an assumption, disappears, the veil of the heart's eye continues to be sown with the needle of jealousy, and the home of the soul cannot be illuminated by the candle of the image of the lover. For this reason, Hacı Bektaş Veli and his dervishes abandoned the sense of discrimination and envy, lived a life without condemning the 72 nations, and adopted the principle of doing good to them. When their heart's eyes were opened, they didn't pay attention to the language, color, or race of anyone. When they looked at someone, they just observed the soil, which is the common substance of all humanity. They even became soil themselves. They will be stepped on, crushed, tortured. However, they will grow green, bloom, shade with trees, bear fruit, bring blessing to those who walk on them, and never complain about the evil done to them. In short, they will respond to evil with good. According to Hacı Bektaş Veli, it is animality to respond to good with evil. It is humanity to respond to evil with good. It is doggish to confront evil with evil. To be of good nature is salvation. Irene Menikov, French woman, who has been doing research among Alevis who have followed the paths and principles of Hacı Bektaş Veli, stated in the preface of one of her books that being in close contact with Alevis broadened her horizons of spirit and her perspective. According to her, this new broadness, where kindness, cooperation, and tolerance can still find life transcendence religions. There is no doubt that Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, who deeply influenced the Sufi movements in Anatolia, also played a role in the emergence of Hacı Bektaş Veli's mystic thought, his multicultural society model. Ahi Evran Veli, a contemporary of Hacı Bektaş Veli, his closest friend and the founder of Ahi Orda, a Futuve, spiritual chivalry organization in Anatolia, followed the paths and principles of Ibn Arabi Sufi philosophy. There are great similarities between the Sufi principle of Ahism and Alevism, Bektashism. According to Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, the first person to represent the path of Futuwa is the Prophet Abraham, the common ancestor of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Futuwa is related to youngness and strength. Allah hasn't created anything in nature stronger than air. The nature of a believing man, on the other hand, is stronger than air. This situation is expressed in a hadith of Prophet Muhammad. At the end of a hadith that narrates Allah's creation of the earth, angels ask, "My God, have you created something stronger than the wind?" Allah answers, "I have created a believer who gives alms in such a way that his left hand doesn't know what he has given with his right hand." Ibn Arabi said, Futuwa is out of the question if a person has no strength, and forgiveness is out of the question if a person has no power. For this reason, the one of who follows the Futuwa principle is the one who doesn't have an enemy, because he pays his debt and releases people's debts. Therefore, he has no enemy. Even if he is harmed, he treats the creatures with kindness. Ibn Arabi likens the situation of such a young man who continues the tradition of the Prophet Abraham to the attitude of Allah, who provides sustenance to those who deny him and his blessings. Their desires don't prevail over them. They have been purified from the characteristics of the self, such as loving being praised, being thanked, and being recognized. Therefore, they have great power against their self. The strength of the people of Futuwa stems from not oppressing a weak person or animal. For this reason, the best of the people of Futuwa is the one of who obeys this principle even against the weakest person. For example, Feta, young, wants to bring the table closer in order to offer food to the guests, but if there is an ant on the table, he acts slowly. He doesn't see fit to get rid of the ants because one of the requirements of Futuve is to put into practice its own animals. Thus, the young man waits until the ant leaves the table without any coercive behavior. The people of Futuve are steadfast. They don't put pressure on anybody but themselves. According to Hacı Bektaş Veli, breaking a heart is like being a hangman. As it is told in Velayetname, while talking, Hacı Bektaş Veli always called people mind kindness. Hacı Bektaş Veli worked like a therapist in the region. He lived in and succeeded in revealing the feelings of goodness in people. In Saltıkname, which describes the legends of Said Sarı Saltık, it is narrated that Hacı Bektaş Veli went on pilgrimage 7 times. Eventually, he sold his 7 pilgrims to a glass of water and gave water to a thirsty person. Anatolian Alevis, who followed his path, have also had the hungry and given water to the thirsty for the love of Imam Hussein, who was left without water for days in Kerbela. Sakka Suyu service is the name of the water distribution service to ones who come to the Cem ritual. This service is an important part of the Cem ritual performed by Alevis every Thursday evening. Hacı Bektaş Veli, while he is doing good to others or thanking him for a favor done to him, doesn't discriminate between people based on their beliefs. He sent Ved with his dervish to the monastery of a priest who asked for his help during the famine. He wholeheartedly thanked a woman from the Christian village of Sineson near Ürgüp for the rye bread offered to him and prayed for Ved to grow in the woman's fields. On the way of Alevi Bektashi Sufism, Hünkar Hacı Bektaş Veli is a lamp in the light of God, which leads his dervishes to approach 72 nations in the same way without discrimination. He elevated his dervishes from the stage of Fetwa, Sharia, to the stage of Taqwa, truth. It directed the inclination of hearts and souls towards goodness and beauty. Hünkar Hacı Bektaş Veli brought the dervishes to a stage where, aside from committing evil, even thinking of evil is considered harmful for sainthood, velayet. This situation is explained in Buyruk, the source book of Alevis, as follows. If a blasphemy or mischief comes into the heart of a believer, will the scribe angels write it? According to the fatwa, they don't do. But according to the taqwa or the hakika, they do. If someone is in the stage of Sharia or Tariqa, angels don't record, but in the stage of truth, they start recording. Their reason is that the truth is the stage of the friend of Allah. The heart of the friend of Allah is supposed to be free from blasphemy and mischief. If mischief leaves a mark on his heart, he falls from stage of sainthood. When negative feelings such as hatred, arrogance, envy, lust, anger, enmity, and greed are cleared from the heart, and the heart becomes the center of all beauties, it will, of course, become difficult to think and imagine evil. Hacı Bektaş Veli's understanding of truth-oriented Sufi education has succeeded in raising people who are not only supposed to discipline their hands, tongue, and waist, but also their hearts. Dervishes and minstrels who, like Yunus Emre, adopted the Sufi teaching of Hacı Bektaş Veli, initiated a relentless struggle against grudge and hatred, evil and selfishness in their time. Imam Ali was the person they were most influenced by after the Prophet Muhammad. That is why, in their belief, the greatest valor was the victory they achieved in the war against themselves. They got rid of the sword of their self and sailed to the sea of friendship. Alevis Bektaşis have acted according to the Hacı Bektaş Veli's that golden advice. Wear dervish code such a way that it will burn away all kinds of evil, meanness, and selfishness in your personality. Don't let this code aggravate these diseases even more. Eat such a way that when you eat it, it will not go away in wine, and all will turn into light. Alevis who read the verse of Nur while lighting the candle at the beginning of Cem ritual think that if they saw a dark place, the veil was in their own eyes, as per the advice of Hünkar. Mürüvvet, this is valor, is to ignore the mistakes of your friends and companions and appear like that. The person who is not hurt by anyone's hurting behavior is in salvation. The one who doesn't hurt someone who deserves to be hurt is generous and brave. Generosity is wanting others to enjoy more than oneself. What makes a person greedy, what causes him to lose his friends and make enemies, is the fact that he forgets one day he will die and indulge his ego in the blessing of the world. In the words of Erich Fromm, today the idea of having has preceded the stage of being. In a famous poem, Yunus Emre says, "Owner of riches, owner of wealth, where has the first owner gone to? Riches are a lie, so is wealth. Mess around a bit until you are through." It is the following words of Hacı Bektaş Veli that inspired Yunus Emre. Look for salvation of your ego in worship. Remember when you will die. Don't give yourself what it wants, because it always wants more. Take knowing yourself as a great blessing. Ask Allah for help in everything. Be vigilant against the enemy who looks friendly. Beware of the proud ignorant. Don't talk without seeing or hearing. Don't look for anybody's fault. Deal with your fault first. Don't talk about yourself. Regard your desire to rise of ambition. Don't get what you did not put with your hands. You should desire for others what you desire for yourself. Don't be a slave to your passion. Don't eat anyone's bread without their consent. Don't spare your bread from anyone. Don't be afraid to be a dervish. Beware of command of your soul. No matter how inferior the enemy is, don't underestimate him. Don't sit at the same table with the ignorant. Now that the friendship of Allah is gained by not breaking hearts, know that the happiness of this world and the hereafter is related with the conversation with the wise man, and stay away from the ignorant, because the conversation has an effect on people. The institutionalized from of unity, solidarity, fraternity, and social integration in the Alevi Bektashi tradition is the practice of musahiblik, which means spiritual brotherhood. The values and behaviors of Futuve morality, such as sharing property, self-sacrifice, altruism, thinking of one's brother before himself, in eating and dressing, advising each other to truth and to passions, are characterized in the practice of spiritual brotherhood. This practice of spiritual brotherhood is historically based on the brotherhood that Muhammad established between the Muslims who emigrated from Mecca and the Muslims of Medina. Musahiblik has been regarded as an up-to-date reflection of the brotherhood of Muhammad Ali. In this spiritual brotherhood, there is no such thing as lending money to each other. A brother meets the financial needs of his other brother without the expectation of any return. If a brother behaves improperly, his spiritual brother will also be taken into account as he doesn't show enough attention to his situation. There are ahitnames in Bektashi Erkannames. Thanks to these, the Tariqa rules that dervishes must obey become a kind of social contract. These rules, which ensure the peace and harmony of the people, are usually listed as articles. Such sources, which are the fixtures of dervish lodges, are the principles that the masters convey to them in the pledge, acknowledgement, and indoctrination ceremonies that dervishes and students constantly read and even memorize. The dervish should abandon behaviors such as belittling the people around him, condemning them as ignorant, discrediting them, being harsh with them, revealing their faults, and lying about them. Breach of trust, defying the parents, insulting the poor and the needy are behaviors that truth seekers should avoid. In conclusion, Hacı Bektaş Veli is a Sufi and philosopher who, with his knowledge and wisdom, has purified our hearts from the darkness of ignorance and the swamp of hatred since the 13th century. His help is a sheep that protects us from the deluge of ignorance and enmity. How happy is the one who gets on this ship and attains human happiness? How happy is the one who cases to discriminate between people and finds peace in togetherness? Thank you for your Thank you for your listening. Yours sincerely. Good evening.